For 8 years, my wife's family called me the charity case. When I got rich, they suddenly didn't remember signing a prenup. Her mom even brought a lawyer to dinner. So I smiled, unzipped my bag, and what I pulled out left every one of them speechless. I, 32M, never thought I'd be writing this, but after what happened at dinner last night, I need to get this off my chest. 8 years ago, I married the love of my life. She was everything I'd ever dreamed of, kind, intelligent, and beautiful inside and out. The problem wasn't her. It was her family. From day one, they made it crystal clear that I wasn't good enough. I was working 3 jobs just to make ends meet, delivering pizzas at night, doing construction during the day, and freelance coding whenever I could squeeze it in. Her father would introduce me at family gatherings as the charity case we took in. Her mother would ask loudly at dinner parties if I was still playing with computers instead of getting a real job. Her brother would joke about how his sister was slumming it with me. My wife would defend me, but I could see the strain it put on her relationship with her family. They lived in this massive house in the suburbs, drove luxury cars, took expensive vacations, while we struggled to pay rent on our tiny apartment. The contrast was humiliating, especially when they never let me forget it. The worst part was the prenup. 3 months before our wedding, her father cornered me in his study. He slid a thick document across his mahogany desk and told me that if I really loved his daughter, I'd sign it without question. The prenup was brutal. If we divorced, I'd get nothing. No alimony, no assets, nothing. He made it clear that this was non-negotiable, that the wedding wouldn't happen without it. I was young, broke, and desperate to prove I wasn't after their money. So I signed it. My wife apologized later, saying her parents insisted on it, and she was caught in the middle. I understood. At least I thought I did. For years, I endured their constant jabs. Every family dinner was an exercise in passive-aggressive torture. They discussed their stock portfolios while pointedly asking if I'd gotten any real job interviews lately. They'd plan family vacations to places they knew we couldn't afford, then act surprised when we declined to join them. The breaking point came 3 years ago during Thanksgiving. Her uncle suggested I should be grateful that their family had lifted me out of poverty by accepting me. The entire table laughed. My wife squeezed my hand under the table, but she didn't speak up. That night, I made a decision that would change everything. I'd been working on a mobile app in my spare time for 2 years. It was a simple productivity tool, nothing groundbreaking, but I believed in it. Every rejection from investors, every bug fix, every sleepless night was fueled by their condescension. I poured every ounce of my frustration and determination into that project. 6 months after that Thanksgiving dinner, Microsoft acquired my app for $12 million. I didn't tell anyone immediately. The money sat in my account while I processed what had happened. I'd gone from struggling to pay rent to being a millionaire overnight. But instead of celebrating, I felt something darker growing inside me. Years of humiliation had planted seeds of resentment that money couldn't wash away. My wife was ecstatic when I finally told her. She cried happy tears and kept saying how proud she was that I'd never given up. For a moment, I remembered why I'd fallen in love with her. She'd always believed in me, even when her family didn't. But her family's reaction was predictable. Suddenly, I wasn't the charity case anymore. Her father started calling me son and asking for investment advice. Her mother began bragging to her friends about her successful son-in-law. Her brother wanted to discuss business opportunities. The same people who'd spent years making me feel worthless were now trying to get close to my money. The real revelation came 6 months ago. My wife and I were discussing buying a house when she casually mentioned that we should probably have the prenup reviewed. She suggested that maybe it wasn't fair anymore, given our changed circumstances. When I asked why she was bringing it up now, she got defensive and said her mother had mentioned it. That's when I knew. They'd all discussed it. My success had made them realize what they might be missing out on, and suddenly the prenup they'd forced me to sign was inconvenient. I hired a private investigator and a forensic accountant. What I discovered made my blood boil. My wife's family wasn't as wealthy as they'd pretended to be. Her father's business had been struggling for years. They'd been living on credit and borrowed money, maintaining their lifestyle through increasingly desperate measures. The big house was mortgaged to the hilt. The luxury cars were leased. Even their expensive vacations were funded by credit cards they could barely pay off. But that wasn't the worst part. The investigator uncovered something that shattered my world completely. My wife had been having an affair with her college boyfriend for the past 2 years. The same boyfriend her family had always wished she'd married instead of me. They'd been meeting at a hotel downtown twice a week, and her family knew about it. They'd all been in on it. Her mother had even covered for her, providing alibis when needed. They were waiting for the right moment to push for a divorce, probably hoping I'd be too grateful for their acceptance to fight the prenup. They wanted my money, but they also wanted me gone. I spent weeks planning my response. Every detail had to be perfect. I consulted with the best divorce attorney in the city and prepared for war. But first, I wanted to give them a chance to show their true colors one more time. Last week, I suggested we have a family dinner to celebrate our good fortune and discuss the future. My wife seemed excited, thinking I was finally ready to embrace her family fully. She had no idea what was coming. The dinner was held at her parents' house, just like old times. The same dining room where they'd humiliated me for years was about to become the stage for their downfall. Her parents, her brother, her aunt, and uncle, all the key players in my 8-year nightmare were present. I arrived with a leather messenger bag, telling everyone I had some exciting news to share about a new business venture. They gathered around the dining table like vultures, eyes gleaming with anticipation of whatever scraps might fall their way. Her father started the conversation by suggesting we discuss restructuring our financial arrangements now that I was successful. He said the prenup had been just a precaution back when I was young and inexperienced, but now that I'd proven myself, perhaps it was time to reconsider. My wife nodded along, saying she'd always felt uncomfortable about the prenup and thought we should consider having it revised or nullified. Her mother chimed in, saying it was only fair that spouses share in each other's success. That's when her mother dropped the bombshell. She'd brought her own attorney to dinner, a sharp-dressed man who'd been introduced as a family friend. He just happened to be there to discuss how we might update our legal arrangements to better reflect our current situation. The attorney began explaining how prenups could be challenged in court, especially when there had been significant changes in financial circumstances. He suggested that a judge might find our prenup unconscionable given how much my situation had improved since signing it. I listened to all of this with a calm smile, occasionally nodding as if I were seriously considering their proposal. Inside, I was burning with rage at their presumption, but I kept my expression neutral. This was exactly what I'd hoped would happen. After the attorney finished his presentation, I thanked everyone for their concern about our financial arrangements. I told them I'd actually been thinking about the same issues and had done some preparation for this conversation. That's when I reached for my bag. I unzipped it slowly, maintaining eye contact with each person around the table. The anticipation in the room was palpable. They thought I was about to produce documents agreeing to their demands. Instead, I pulled out a thick manila folder and placed it in the center of the table. I told them that before we discussed changing any agreements, there were some things they should probably know about. The first document I laid out was a detailed financial analysis of their family's actual situation. I watched their faces change as they realized what they were looking at. Their father's failing business, their mortgage situation, their credit card debt. Everything was laid out in black and white. I explained that I'd been curious about why they were suddenly so interested in renegotiating our prenup, so I'd done some research. I told them I found it interesting that their concern for fairness had emerged just as their own financial situation was becoming desperate. But that was just the opening act. The next set of documents hit like a nuclear bomb. Photos, hotel receipts, credit card statements, phone records, everything documenting my wife's affair. I spread them across the table like playing cards, each one landing with devastating precision. The room fell completely silent. My wife's face went white as she stared at the evidence of her betrayal. Her family looked like they'd been caught in headlights, frozen and terrified. I told them that I'd discovered not only the affair, but also their knowledge of it. I'd found text messages between my wife and her mother discussing alibis. I'd uncovered the family group chat where they discussed their strategy for handling the situation. The attorney they'd brought suddenly looked very uncomfortable and excused himself, mumbling something about a conflict of interest. Smart man. But I wasn't done. The final document was the most devastating of all. I pulled out a divorce petition, already filed with the court. I told them that thanks to the prenup they'd insisted on, and thanks to the documentation of my wife's adultery, this was going to be a very simple process. She would get exactly what the prenup specified. Nothing. The adultery clause in the prenup, which they'd probably forgotten about in their greed, meant that her infidelity voided any claim she might have had to spousal support. The photos and documentation made it impossible to contest. I explained that I'd also filed a civil lawsuit against her boyfriend for alienation of affection. While not all states allow such suits, ours did, and I had more than enough evidence to pursue it. I told them I was seeking damages for the emotional distress and the cost of the private investigation. My wife finally found her voice and started to protest, but I held up my hand and continued. I told them that I was also considering pursuing a case for fraud, given that they'd hidden material information about their financial situation while pressuring me to modify our prenup. The room erupted in chaos. Her mother started crying and insisting they'd only wanted what was best for everyone. Her father began making threats about what his lawyers would do. Her brother accused me of being vindictive and cruel, but I remained calm. I told them that I'd spent 8 years listening to their insults, their jokes, their constant reminders that I wasn't good enough for their family. I'd endured years of being treated like a charity case while they lived beyond their means and looked down on me. I explained that their sudden change of heart about the prenup wasn't about fairness, it was about greed. They'd seen my success and decided they wanted a piece of it, just like they'd always taken advantage of others when it suited them. The beautiful irony wasn't lost on me. The prenup they'd forced me to sign to protect their daughter from my poverty was now protecting me from their greed and her betrayal. I packed up my documents and prepared to leave. Before walking out, I told them that the charity case they'd mocked for 8 years was now worth more than their entire family combined. I said that the computer nerd they'd dismissed had built something they could never understand or achieve. My wife followed me to the door, begging me to reconsider, promising she could explain everything. I told her that the time for explanations had passed. The marriage was over, and thanks to their own prenup and her choices, there was nothing left to discuss. Update 1. It's been 3 weeks since that dinner, and the fallout has been exactly what I expected. My wife has been calling and texting constantly, alternating between apologies and anger. She hired her own attorney, but he quickly explained that the prenup was ironclad and the evidence of adultery made any challenge nearly impossible. Her family's financial situation has gotten even worse. Apparently, her father had been counting on accessing my money to save his business. Without that lifeline, he's facing bankruptcy. The irony is delicious. The same man who called me a charity case is now the one who needs charity. My wife moved back in with her parents, which must be a humbling experience for all of them. The big house they used to lord over me is about to be foreclosed on. Her mother has been telling people that I'm a vindictive monster who destroyed their family. She conveniently forgets that they destroyed it themselves. The divorce is proceeding smoothly. My attorney says it should be finalized within 2 months. The adultery evidence is so overwhelming that my wife's lawyer has advised her not to contest anything. Update 2. The divorce was finalized yesterday. 8 years of marriage ended with a few signatures and a judge's stamp. My wife got exactly what the prenup specified, nothing. She kept her personal belongings and walked away with the same amount she'd brought to the marriage. I've started a new company and moved across the country. I bought a house in California, far away from the memories and the toxicity. For the first time in years, I feel free. I've been getting messages from mutual friends saying I went too far, that I should have been more forgiving. They don't understand what 8 years of systematic humiliation does to a person. They don't know what it's like to be constantly reminded that you're not worthy, only to discover that the people judging you are frauds themselves. Some people might say I'm bitter or vengeful. Maybe they're right, but I prefer to think of it as justice. They spent years trying to make me feel small, and in the end, their own greed and deception made them smaller than they'd ever made me feel. The charity case they mocked is now free, wealthy, and building a new life. Meanwhile, they're dealing with bankruptcy, divorce, and the consequences of their own choices. I don't regret signing that prenup 8 years ago. It turned out to be the best decision I never knew I was making. Sometimes the very thing meant to hurt you becomes the thing that saves you. As I write this from my new home office, looking out at the Pacific Ocean, I can't help but smile. The kid they said would never amount to anything just proved them all wrong. And the best part? I did it all without becoming the kind of person they were. Justice has a way of working itself out. Sometimes it just takes a little patience and a lot of planning.